Hey! Welcome to another episode of the Bionicle Inspiration Series, and we've got a theme today that I haven't done in ages, but it's a theme that I think is always a bit of fun, and I think it's one that people also really enjoy. So we're going to be focusing on weapons today. So of course everyone builds their MOCs, and they're awesome, but sometimes I think the best little finishing touches, or sometimes the thing that can make the MOC, is a really solid, good weapon. So we're going to hopefully inspire you today, give you a few ideas. If you're looking to be a little bit more creative with some of the weapons that you could put on your MOC, or maybe you're just like, I really want to build a gun, or put a cool sword or a staff or something on my MOC, but like, how could I do it? Well, let's take a look at a few different ways that you could do it, and hopefully give you some ideas. So let's begin. The very first MOC we're going to look at today is by Max Howell, and this is Explode. So of course Explode, or I always called him Explode. I don't know why I called him that. It's definitely not how you pronounce that, but Explode. He is obviously a revamp of one of the original Hero Factory sets, and I think this is a fantastic revamp of the set as well. I found this old image of, I assume like a Hero Factory comic with Explode in it, and he's holding these explosives. He looks really derpy, but I think this actually kind of describes the character pretty well. The idea of him being this, obviously, explosive, hungry dude, and I think it's a pretty easy translation that he would be almost kind of Rambo-like, having a bunch of different weapons, whether that's him having this little dagger, big old ammo belt across his chest, and what appears to be this really large, awesome-looking gun. And I think it's just a really fun little sort of visual distinction that, you know, the ammo belt on his torso very clearly matches up with the ammo that's actually inside the gun that he's holding. I think that's just a little bit of fun. Makes sense. It's like, that's the thing. It's quite simple. It's quite obvious. I don't know. There's something very visually pleasing about seeing that. I think it's a really nice addition. I also quite enjoy just taking a look at the gun itself, like how it's been built, using that sort of circular, or a couple different circular pieces there to really lock in all the ammo in the gun, but also how it's sort of been color blocked here so that there's the brown in the separate areas there. And I know it's just nice to see those system pieces being used so well there to really represent how the gun would look. It's awesome. And I love how the little handle on the gun too attaches onto the hand there. So when we take a look at the hand design, he simply just moved one of the fingers across a little bit, and there's that little sort of exposed area of that little clip that he's just sort of clipped on onto an Exoforce robot arm piece there. And it's just a nice little way of attaching the weapon, you know? Sometimes it can be a little difficult to actually attach your weapons onto the hand there, so I think it's just nice to study that sort of thing and see how other people did it and how you yourself could do something fairly similar. So that's more or less it for the weapon, but I do love that idea of, you know, you can have your MOC have, you know, one gun, one knife, one sword, whatever. Maybe they're dual wielding, whatever you want to do. But why not go a little ham with it too? Give them a knife, give them a gun, give them an ammo belt, maybe even give them some secondary weapons that, you know, they don't have on their person, but they do use them, you know, that sort of stuff. It's a really fun thing that you can explore. So I think don't be afraid to go super ham with it and really give them just some crazy, odd, unique weapons. It's really cool. But enough on the weapons of this MOC, let's actually look at the actual MOC itself. I think overall, when you take off some of these details, but even when they're on, there's a really awesome, smooth, general aesthetic to this MOC here. He looks quite villainous, you know, just the way that the sort of spikes on his feet and just kind of the general stance of him. And also I think that Explode mask really goes a long way to looking very villainous, because of course he is a villain from Hero Factory. So, you know, sometimes mask choice can really, really sell the character. I think one of my favorite little details on this MOC is the lower arm design there. It looks quite simple. You can kind of, from the most part in this picture here, see exactly how it's made, just using a ball joint, I imagine sort of like 4 or 5 long axle, 2 of those sort of 2x2 cylinder system pieces, and then you just attach the Hero Factory armor onto the ball joint, and then on the other end there you attach a typical sort of like arm socket piece, and, you know, other ball joints and different things there to make the arm on the other side. Pretty simple design, but when you look at it from the different angles there, it looks really, really nice. It does give you a sort of slightly different way of attaching it, as it kind of naturally wants to rest on that sort of 90-degree angle, rather than being, you know, all the way down to the bottom, which it still can go down and be sort of extended, hyper-extended, whatever you want to say. But it works. It works really well. I think it's just a really solid design, quite simplistic, but just a great way of making a little bit more sort of customization to that very typical sort of Hero Factory arm design there. It's really, really cool. So yeah, overall, fantastic MOC and some brilliant weapons that I think really expand upon the character, really sort of draw out its natural personality and seem very fitting for the original sort of canon story for the character as well. Let's move on to the next MOC now. It's a really cool one. This is by JQ Builds, and this is Leewa Toa of Jungle G2 Remake. So I love this. I think this is a great way of reimagining Leewa, and it's cool because he's a lot more sort of bulky and big. He's naturally a bit larger than the original set, and Leewa typically is very sort of skinny and agile, whereas this guy seems a bit more like a bruiser type character, which I think is a really unique take on the character. And yeah, maybe it doesn't actually, necessarily fit his personality in the story, but there's nothing wrong with just making it your own and really, really changing it in that way. I think it's cool. But it does have some nice homages to some of the other versions of Leewa. Like, for example, looking at the weapon that he's got here, it is very sort of subtly similar to the axe that the original Leewa had in the very first wave of Bionicle. Because it's a green axe for the most part. But it's nice that it's been reimagined using these Elix spine pieces, which are used throughout the rest of the MOC as well. But I think it's just a much more unique take on an axe, and it kind of almost looks a little bit more sort of jungle-like. I can almost sort of see those as vines, or I don't know, some sort of thorns or something that you might see on a plant or something. So it seems very fitting for the fact that he is a Toa of jungle. But yeah, also seeing these Elix spike pieces here on the back, sort of on the sort of sides of the shoulders, but also on the kind of like waistcoat thing here, little sort of plant leaf dress that he has going on there. Works really well. I like that piece is being used in multiple different places on this MOC, but each time it's used, it is for a sort of very subtly different reason. It's really, really stunning, actually. I quite like that. And it's nice to see them used again with some of those palm tree leaf pieces as well on the waist little dress thing there, because they flow together quite nicely. It looks really good. So great way of sort of illustrating that plant life element that Leewa has here, just by using a couple different pieces there to really kind of draw that out. I think it's really fitting and really, really cool. I want to take a quick look at his little finger design here as well. I quite like how he's done the thumb design. Typically with most like Hydraxon style posable fingers using those Exoforce robot arm pieces. I don't think there's probably not been a single episode of Biss where I've not mentioned that piece. It's used so much, man. But typically, the thumb is just using that exact same piece. But here, he's kind of bulked out the thumb a little bit using some other little technique pieces and things. I like that a lot. Thumb is sort of slightly bigger than your other fingers, depending on the way your body is shaped. But still, I think it's very fitting and works quite well. And it's just a nice sort of way of just sort of subtly updating the hand design there. I think goes a long way and looks really, really cool. So yeah, overall, I think this is a brilliant take on a Toa of Jungle and a brilliant revamp of Leewa with a brilliant weapon. You guessed it. So yeah, love your work. Let's move on to the next one. There's a really distinct and different weapon here on Bubble Girl by Bodahim Tree. So I love the idea that her weapons are kind of, these bubble kind of gauntlet things with these tubes that kind of flow back into a backpack. It's just a really distinct and different weapon choice. And I don't know, I imagine the way that she uses these could be like sort of boxing gloves, perhaps, like it sort of is this sort of elementally powered punch, or maybe it's just sort of water is kind of naturally stored in these little kind of canisters, and she can kind of manipulate it and sort of, launch beams out with it, or sort of spray water or whatever. I don't know. There's countless ways that this could work, and it's kind of just up to your imagination. But visually, regardless, it looks stunning. It's a great idea, just filling these ball-shaped cockpit pieces with a bunch of, Translite blue studs to simulate water. It looks awesome. It's really, really clever and really cool. So I love the idea of doing that with a weapon. Sure, you could do an axe, you could do a dagger, you could do some guns, you could do very sort of stock standard weapons that exist in the real world. Or, you build them whatever you want. You let your imagination run wild and build crazy weird stuff like this that, you kind of get the spirit of how it works. But, there's no sort of real world counterpart to it. So you can have a lot of creative license there, that's for sure. So I love how that looks. I love the general concept of that. And it's been really well executed here too. I think it's a very clever idea. And it's also cool too how it's kind of themed to an element. It's sort of, you could very easily see this on a Toa of Water. Of course, this is just a character that doesn't exist in the Bionicle world, but it's still a construction themed MOC. So I don't know, maybe you could do something very similar to this with lava. It's the same kind of concept. Of sort of canisters in the arms there with a kind of backpack, but there's lava pumping through it or acid pumping through it, or I don't know, maybe you could just kind of play with this sort of concept or this idea and come up with some sort of weird and wonderful elemental themed weapon that could fit your character, because I'm sure if you have a quick think, you might be able to think of something cool. Regardless though, awesome weapon, but let's talk about the actual MOC itself. So the general kind of head design of this, of course, a more sort of humanoid shaped face there with some brilliant looking orange hair using a bunch of different tail pieces, claws, all that sort of stuff, but also some other little system elements just to really give it that sort of, flowing hair shape. Looks very nice. I also really enjoy the natural sort of shaping on the waist here. The way that those two little yellow, claw pieces kind of naturally wrap around it there. It's just some, really nice shaping and just a great way to kind of create this little subtle angle there, this little curve. It's just a fantastic looking design. Additionally, too, I love the inclusion of the pistons on the lower legs here. That piston piece naturally, it literally is a piston. That's sort of its intention in various Technic sets and other things there. So using it as an actual sort of design element there, where it doesn't necessarily have any actual function, I imagine, just from looking at these pictures, but visually it makes it look more sort of robotic and industrial, perhaps, for lack of a better term. I think it's a really, really clever, unique design, and easily something you could do yourself. Take a look at those sort of pieces that give a very specific aesthetic, and maybe they have a function with that aesthetic, but you could just put them in as little sort of little subtle details that go a long way, that's for sure. So something to consider, and I think it looks really swell. So yeah, I love a good, really unique, visually striking weapon, and in general just some fantastic designs all throughout this MOC. Love your work. On to the next MOC now. This is by Master Rika, and this is called Nygun version 2. So I don't know, this immediately grabbed me because, of course, it's using a non-official Lego piece here. It appears to be this awesome sort of like leather jacket of sorts. I'm not sure how specifically he came across that. Maybe it's from some sort of action figure, or maybe it's just sort of custom made, or maybe he actually cut up some clothing that he had. Multiple different ways that you could make your own version of that. But I love the aesthetic that it gives this MOC here. It almost has sort of like Matrix vibes to me, to some degree. It really makes him look like this sort of really cool, edgy, dark, brooding character. And I always think that using kind of cloth or other sort of, clothing sort of styled elements like this can really enhance the way that a MOC looks. And honestly, I think it is a really fine addition. So love a little bit of customization there. And of course, there's some further customization throughout this MOC, whether that's the sort of painted elements on the Evo mask there, or the little sort of other kind of drawn-on details on the gun as well. It's little subtle things. It enhances the MOC, makes it look unique. I imagine that that's been accomplished through Sharpie. It could have been painted, it's hard to say, but it looks like it could be Sharpie, which, that was something that back in the day when I used to do a little bit of customization on some of my Lego stuff, I found using Sharpie made it just a little bit easier because, I'm not necessarily a whiz with paint or with, other sort of art materials that you could use to customize stuff. But, it's pretty cheap and easy to buy a Sharpie. And as long as you've got a bit of a steady hand and an idea in mind, it's not that hard to customize stuff. So, that could be a fairly cheap and easy way of doing a little bit of customization if that's the route that you want to go down with a MOC. You, of course, don't have to if you don't want to. And definitely be careful what you do put Sharpie or paint on, because you don't want to paint a piece that's worth a lot of money and then ruin its value. But by all means, if it's something you want to do, explore that, because like we see here, it does enhance the MOC a little bit and makes it look just that much cooler. So really nice choice. But let's talk about the weapons, because that's what we're here for today. I love the inclusion of 2 shoulder-mounted guns, because we all love War Machine from Marvel, and one of the reasons we love him is because he's got a shoulder gun, and he's also a cool character and he looks cool. What more do you want? But still, shoulder cannons, awesome. And I think a really nice way too of adding even more guns onto a MOC, because, sometimes the more guns it has, the better, sometimes. So I like the fact that there's some on his shoulders there, so it frees up his hands, so he's not just holding 70 different guns and is running out of space, so much so that he's got to have a gun in his mouth or holding it with his foot. I don't know, It's just a nice way of kind of freeing up space, but also allowing him to have even more cool firepower, which is awesome, I think. And speaking of firepower, it looks like the actual handheld gun that he has there probably can fire the studs that it's got in there. I imagine you just sort of spin the little lever at the back there and it should work. It's hard to say. Or maybe the lever on the side, actually. Maybe not the lever at the top. Hard to say. There's no pictures of it actually firing or anything, but I imagine it works. And overall, I think it's just a really solid-looking gun, too. You really just kind of have to make that kind of barrel shape there, and kind of goes a long way. As I like the inclusion of the little tile there in light bluish, trans light blue. And I don't know, it kind of gives it this sort of laser blaster effect, like there's some sort of, blue laser material that's inside the gun that sort of powers it and it shoots that lasers or whatever. I don't know. I think it's just a nice way of kind of playing with the color there and sort of illustrating how the gun might work at the same time. It's pretty cool. But yeah, overall some really nice looking guns, some awesome customization to this MOC, and overall just a really badass looking character. It's pretty cool. Alright, let's move on to the second last MOC now. This is by Socket Ball, and this is Toa Prisma Stone. So the cool weapon that this MOC has here is almost sort of like a Magna Guard staff from Star Wars. That might have been the direct inspiration, it might not have been, but still, you can draw that parallel there. Really nice looking weapon, using some axle pieces, some other connector stuff, but the awesome little yellow tips at the end, giving it this sort of, I don't know, like electrical charge, perhaps. Really, really cool. So these specific pieces come from a variety of different sets. They came in some elf sets, but specifically in Trans Yellow, they came in a couple sets, but one of the best examples where you got a few of them was this seasonal gingerbread house set where they were used as the sort of stars on the top of the tree there, the Christmas tree. Really cool looking pieces, and I think they're quite, sort of, I don't know, they're good for adding little bits of detail. They have that sort of beautiful shape to them, that kind of diamond shape that allows you to kind of arrange them in different patterns and things. I don't know, I think there's just there's a lot of use that you can get out of them. They're really, really cool. So, yeah, honestly, a great way of simulating that sort of, I don't know, elementally powered or electrically charged sort of shocking staff, perhaps, on this character here. Or maybe it's just a staff that has lights on the end and it helps him see in the dark. I don't know. It could be multiple different things, but it looks cool. And I think ultimately if your weapon just looks cool, you're doing a good job, So, love that inclusion there. Really, really awesome. I also love the leg design on this MOC here. The sort of weird curve that they have on the feet there. It kind of reminds me of like disabled athletes who'll have like a replacement leg. And they do have that cool kind of curve to them. I think it's possible that was the inspiration here. It's possible that it's not. I don't know. But a really unique way of doing a leg design there that's very different than what you typically see. So I think that's awesome. Really, really do like that. And another thing I really enjoy is the inclusion of the Mutter torso here on the torso of the MOC. It's kind of rare to see Mutter torsos being used on MOCs, and, they're a valid, awesome-looking piece, and, they came in the Toa Nuva and the Toa Mutter, and, they're great-looking pieces, and there's no reason you can't use them to make a torso design, Most people tend to go the Anika route, using Anika torsos, or just using the torso pieces from Hero Factory sets and stuff, or, Bionicle G2, whatever. But let's not forget the Mutter torso. I feel like it's an underappreciated torso piece there. So really nice to see that being used here and being used so well also. So of course Socket Ball made this, and this mask here is something that Socket Ball also made. It is technically a custom piece. Socket Ball has his own little business at making custom-made Bionicle masks. And I'll put some links in the description so you can check out his website. I definitely recommend what he does. He makes some fantastic things. But this mask here is very subtly custom because he was saying that the original version of that Miru Leewa's mask there is a very subtly different silver, and since then the color of silver has updated and changed. So this is him remaking the mask in a more sort of updated silver color, which, great idea to do that. And I almost didn't notice it too until I read the description there. So awesome to see. The final MOC here is a little bit of a cheeky one. It's a little bit different. This is called Main, and it's built by Brick Thing. So, I'll read the description here because it's kind of fun. He says here, this is designed by Alpha Team Leader Preston Stormer. This cool cycle is the perfect vehicle for chasing criminals and getting to the scene of the crime quickly. It's powered by a cold fusion hydrogen reactor core. The Frost cycle is extremely fast and has emissions that are so clean that it can act against global warming. That's fun. I like that. And I think this is a great way of using the weapon piece that originally came on the Preston Stormer Hero Factory 1.0 set. So, before we were seeing ways of making your own weapons, but why not use some of the original weapon pieces as actual elements on a MOC? Because like we see here, it can be done really, really well. So, at the very sort of back of the cycle there, you can see the sort of frost effect that was on Preston Stormer's sort of gun arm there. And I think it's a great way of sort of almost illustrating kind of like speed lines, or just sort of showcasing the natural sort of way that this was powered that we read about in the description there. And it also just kind of looks cool. And naturally, the sort of detailed and kind of mechanical textures that were on Preston Stormer's gun arm, the way that they sort of stretch across the side of the bike there, it really does look like all the kind of mechanical details you would typically see on your normal everyday bike. So it's really nice that he's playing with the natural textures and the natural kind of shaping of this piece as well, and it kind of helps to really form the general shape of this bike too. And then the way that it kind of tails off at the end there, and it sort of nicely hugs into the sort of top of the wheel at the very front there. It's just a brilliant way of using that piece. It definitely is a great example of a nice part use there for sure. And I think it's really inspirational because, hey, there's no reason you yourself can't make an awesome mock using a whole bunch of the different weapon pieces from Hero Factory sets and coming up with some really clever designs. I mean, heck, you could easily do this yourself with, Bulk's mechanical arm or a bunch of the other mechanical arms that came on some of the Hero Factory sets. No reason you couldn't do that. So definitely have a play around with it. Take a look at your weapon pieces and see how you could use them as, additional sort of parts of the body or parts of a vehicle or all sorts of different things. I think it's a really great way of just discovering a really nice part use, is just studying different pieces and saying, like, well, what does this look like from specific angles, or where could this sort of insert itself interestingly into a mock, and just sort of seeing what you can come up with. Have a bit of a brainstorm, see what you learn, see what you can think about. I think this is a brilliant example of that. So that's it for this episode, all about weapons. Whether you make your own custom weapons or you use weapons as a part of a design of a mock, there's certainly a lot of ways you could approach it. So hopefully we've given you a few ideas today. And of course, if you have, let me know. You can reach out to me on my social media. All of the links to that is in the description below. And by all means, let me know if you got inspired by the episode and show me what you built, because I'm more than happy to see it. Additionally, in the description, there is links to all the mocks that you saw in today's episode. So be sure to check out all the stuff that they've made, and also be sure to check out Socket Ball's store, because he makes some cool stuff, and definitely support him. He's an awesome guy. Additionally, in the description is the submission email. You're also seeing it on your screen right now. So if you want to submit some of your own stuff to the show, that is the place to do so. Send me as much as you want. You can send me one picture, you can send me 20 pictures. It's best if you keep it in one email though, but do your best. It's not the end of the world if you send me a couple emails, but if you send me one email, per picture, it does clog up the email a bit. So, do your best, but still, there's no wrong or right way to do it necessarily. Just send me whatever you've got, and I'll do my best to put it in future episodes when I can. All right, that's it for today. Hopefully you enjoyed. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.